How's it going, everybody? Today's episode is sponsored by Pascal Schmidlin and his short film, Catgirl. Pascal Schmidlin is a talented fan of the show, and you should check out his short film because, well, he does an excellent job. It's linked in the description. Go check it out. Thanks so much for sponsoring the episode. Oh, hold on. If you pledge to Patreon $10 or more, you get this shirt. All you have to do is pledge $10. So you support the show, and you also get a free shirt, or you're paying $10 for a shirt, which is, gotta say, that's a pretty good deal. It is finally time. Oh my goodness. The film franchise that built this channel. Do I even need to introduce this review other than to say, yes, there is a third God's Not Dead movie, since barely anybody went to see it. Compared to the previous films, ooh, that is sad. Now, I've thought a lot about this because that's something that I do. I analyze why Christian movies succeed or fail in the box office because why not? It's not weird or anything. And I have a few explanations as to why I think this movie didn't do as well as the previous ones. First off, we already saw 2 installments of this same exact message, so why make a third? Also, the people who would go see this movie already spent their money on the film I Can Only Imagine, and that movie made all of the money. And third, I think that the success of I Can Only Imagine kind of shows that audiences, especially Christian audiences, are kind of done with the victim Christian mentality. I could be wrong, but it just seems like people are ready for something different. And perhaps the world of Christian movies is changing. That's a good thing. I mean, that's what I've been saying I've wanted all along. And as amazing of a film I thought Let There Be Light was to watch, remember that movie, Let There Be Light? That's, woo. Whew. I think that film might have been the final nail in the coffin of that type of movie. You know, it's just kind of it's just a bridge too far. A lot of people just aren't willing to go. They played their hand and it's done. And that, I think, is great. I mean, it's not great for my channel. What am I gonna review now? Conspiracy theories? Anyway, the God's Not Dead film franchise has never let me down before and has given me a lot of great content, and for that, I am very grateful. I have a deep, weird love for Pureflix and all the wonderful gifts that it has given me. Let's just take the time to celebrate with this film. It's the moment that we've all been waiting for. Grab your cell phones and get ready to text all your friends about my review of God's Not Dead, A Light in Darkness. I get the feeling like this is gonna be kind of like a rock band playing all their greatest hits, but yes, of course, this isn't a dirty movie. It's a pure flick, which is good. Very good. Okay. And of course, voiceover.
Sometimes all it takes is a spark, but the spark becomes a flame.
Only takes a spark.
Power can be so overwhelming, it transforms everything around it.
This is the first time that God's Not Dead has done this, so you get a pass? Maybe? I don't know. Still can't believe they're trying to milk this franchise. All right, to recap, if you don't remember, previously on God's Not Dead, we were left with this tantalizing post-credit sequence where they tease us about what this movie is going to be about. You see, our favorite person in the whole world, Pastor Dave, is taken to jail because he stands up for his right to not turn his sermons into the government. All the pastors in Arkansas, the government happens to want to just review their sermons for no reason whatsoever, and he's like, well, I'm not gonna do that. Of course, why would you do that? Unless, of course, you were asked to turn the sermons in because they were considered some sort of evidence based on a lawsuit that you yourself had initiated, but other than that, I see no reason why this would ever happen anyway. And seriously, this really scared me because I'm like, oh, great. Now I'm gonna have to do all this research and study every single little minute detail about the one case that happened in Houston a few years ago and explain why this particular situation is contrived and the situation that they're referencing is a completely different situation. But it seems the director, Michael Mason, first-time director, never directed anything else before in his life. He agrees with me in thinking that is a dumb storyline and brilliantly concocts a new way to get him out of the situation that he had been painted in by the previous director as quickly as possible.
I am grateful to the court that they recognized that this mandate was unconstitutional.
Great insight from, once again, first-time director Michael Mason. A real, natural filmmaker. I think he's gonna go a long way. I look forward to other Michael Mason films. And waiting for him outside is a bunch of news people, because he's now the star of the show.
I think this is more of a human rights issue. It's about our right to see truth and to share that truth with others.
How do you define truth exactly?
Truth is a person of Jesus Christ.
All right, I don't want to spend all day on what he just said, but yeah, I think I'm gonna have to real quick break down exactly what he he just said for everyone, because it sounds good, I guess, if you don't think about it. Okay, so first he says,
I think this is more of a human rights issue.
yes, I agree. If somebody was thrown in jail because they wouldn't turn in their sermons to the government for no stated reason and not connected to any pending lawsuit, seemingly only just to examine the sermons and make sure that they fall in line with the current government-approved newspeak, yes, that is wrong. That is a violation of human rights, not just a violation of religious rights. And I'm not even saying that the pastors in Houston were right or wrong. I'm just saying that this scenario is not the same as what happened there. All right, next thing he says is,
It's about our right to see truth and to share that truth with others.
well, I would say that is half right. We do have the right to seek truth, sure. And we have the right to share with others. You should have the right to speak. And just end it there. It's not whether it's truth or not saying that there's multiple truths, but that we don't know everything. And how are we going to figure out what we do know and what we don't know if we are only allowed to speak, as you said, truth? And there are some things that we just can't all agree on. And I think that it's good to live in a world where we do disagree. Otherwise, who's going to decide what's true? We'd have to implement some sort of ministry of truth or something. But then he says the most egregious thing that I have heard in this whole thing.
Truth is a person of Jesus Christ.
So now you're saying it's not a human rights issue. You're saying that people have the right to free speech, as long as that speech is talking about Jesus. I'm not saying he's wrong about Jesus being truth. I'm just saying not everybody agrees with that. Do we want to make it illegal to disagree with Reverend Dave here? No thanks. I reject that. What a slippery statement that is. Oh, this is a human rights issue. People have the right to speak the truth. Of course, truth is just Christianity. That's all that you can say. Maybe I'm getting caught up in the semantics of all of this. I don't want to get too worked up here at the beginning of the movie, but I don't like it. Of course, it turns out I'm not the only one who has a problem with it. All the cable news channels are talking about it.
Jesus Christ is the one truth? This guy just can't help himself, can he?
This guy is a pastor who was jailed for his belief. Freedom of worship.
In places of worship.
Wow, I really relate to this because of social media.
What's the church doing on a state campus in the first place?
If you're asking why a church is on a school campus, then you're probably pretty ignorant as to the history of your own school, or even the history of the education system in the United States. As much as I hate to agree with Leland Sandoval here, he makes a good point. All right, so quickly we learn that the subject of the movie is not going to be about this guy and his sermons being taken away, but instead it will be about the unwanted presence of this church on a public school campus. Look at the recommended videos. Boy, that looks like my recommended videos on my channel. Now that the pastor has gone to jail and there's all this media attention around him, the school has kind of become a lightning rod of criticism for protesters. You've got all these SJWs trying to get the church off the school grounds. And of course, you've got the Christians who are meekly trying to have service, just leaving everybody alone. And thus we have our typical premise that fits right inside this next installment of our God's Not Dead anthology. God's Not Dead. Can I just say one last time that I think that this is a bad name for the movie. A Light in Darkness just doesn't roll off the tongue very well. It should be A Light in the Darkness. Maybe that's why the film didn't do so well. People were Google searching it. They're like, God's Not Dead, A Light in the Darkness. And it just nothing ever popped up. All right, now we get into the actual story of the film where we have real footage instead of just news camera footage.
You're gonna ask out or what?
So actually in this film, Pastor Dave has a love interest. That's right. It's a little sub-story that happens throughout this film that I'm actually probably gonna be skipping over most of it throughout the review. It doesn't hurt the movie. It actually probably helps to humanize that character a little bit, but I have nothing more to say about it other than, I mean, you get the idea. It's a typical little love story, and you know what? It gives you guys a reason to, an incentive to go purchase the Blu-ray. That way, Pureflix or whoever's distributing this has no reason to demonetize me because I'm encouraging people to go watch the movie. Well, things are really starting to get tense at the church, and even Reverend Dave's Prius can't stop these liberal protesters. Looks like the people who were protesting at the high school in God's Not Dead 2 have now found a new place to whine. Later that evening, we have Reverend Dave and Reverend Jude opening up and sharing their feelings. I don't know why.
Okay, let's not make a big deal out of it. I'm just saying that I'm grateful for you. I'm excited.
I feel the same.
But just when you thought things could not get any crazier in this dull, boring movie, something actually happens.
What was that?
I don't know.
Apparently, somebody throws a brick through the church window. Who could it be? Is it a member of Antifa? Is it some crazed homosexual? Or maybe a member of the ACLU? Well, we'll never know because he or she gets away. Come on, David White, you can't catch up with this guy or girl. You're supposed to be an action star. Meanwhile, Jude goes inside to investigate what happened, and then the church blows up! Holy cow! Reverend Dave summons all of his Revelation Road powers and drags Jude out of the church, while all of this fake fire nearly consumes them alive! Wow, okay. Dave finally makes it outside, but he's too late.
No talk, brother.
Spoiler alert, Jude isn't going to make it. But before he dies, he says this secret message to Dave in Swahili.
Mungu yu mwema wakati wote.
What do you say?
And Dave doesn't understand, but obviously we know because it's the only thing that the guy ever says, right?
God is good all the time.
Please, God. No, Jude. Help!
What is this movie doing to me that I feel? I'm sad. All that Jude ever wanted to do was drive to Disney World in a Prius 12 hours earlier. And who knows what we're gonna see. Maybe we're gonna go back and see what would have happened if Dave had never become a Christian. Heaven.
Jesus, man.
But seriously, folks, we are actually introduced to a new character we've never seen before. This is Keaton, and I really like this character, and I'll tell you why. Remember in the first movie, whenever we had a guy who was struggling the whole time because I'm just so perfect, all I want to do is worship God and believe in God. All the struggles that he had, all the conflict was just him facing people who were trying to get him to not be perfect and awesome. And that was the same with the second movie, but here we actually have a character who isn't sure if she believes in God.
I'm starting to feel pretty dumb talking to myself when you don't talk back.
It's an internal struggle. She's the good guy, but she's struggling with her faith.
Wherever you are, I'm still here.
Well, I'm sure I know where this movie's going to take it, where it's going to end up. I do appreciate that the movie's willing to address this topic in a reasonable way, and not just painting some weird, cartoony straw man as the skeptic. So she's a Christian, as made evident by this cross bracelet, but she feels like she's just talking to herself when she prays. It is frustrating when you hear that apparently God is always showing up to people in burning bushes, or in shacks in the woods, or to reporters, and yet when we pray, most of us, we feel like it's just bouncing off the ceiling. That's relatable. Good job, movie. All right, and then her boyfriend shows up, and you know what? He's also a pretty good actor, which is really an interesting creative choice. So her boyfriend turns out to be your typical upperclassman dating a freshman. He kind of acts like he's got everything figured out, including this whole God stuff.
My parents would be devastated if they found out I was even questioning. Okay, you have no idea.
I did my time as a kid, remember? I just got out sooner than you did.
And he's not really very understanding to her and what she's going through, but he thinks that he's helping her out. And you don't get the impression that he's a total jerk to the point where you're like, why are they even dating? It's relatable and subtle, which is frankly surprising for this film. I wasn't expecting that. I just hope they don't screw it up by trying too hard to relate with the kids of the next scene.
It's called the Mandela effect.
Crap.
Because the Kit Kat logo doesn't have a hyphen, it proves there are multiple realities.
Okay, look, you're oversimplifying, but yes.
That's right, we cut over to Keaton and her boyfriend doing homework and hanging out in their college dorm rooms with their friends. What are they discussing? The Mandela effect.
Curious George used to have a tail, but now he doesn't.
What? This is freaking me out.
You haven't heard about this?
Ugh. Jeez, I hate this thing. It's the stupidest concept ever. I know people in my comments were like,
Kevin, you gotta do some research for once in your lifetime.
did they just Google, what's the latest pseudo-intellectual bullcrap that the kids are talking about these days? Oh, Mandela effect, interesting. Let's stick that in the movie.
Look, it's science, yo, okay? Quantum physics. Look it up.
Physics.
You guys seriously not hear how ridiculous you sound?
Okay, but God had himself a human son who could walk on water and multiply fish, and that's not ridiculous? Yeah, given the choice, I'm taking the Kit Kat theory. And if we get lucky, maybe we'll collide with the reality where our school isn't poisoned by Reverend Dave and his one truth.
Wow, that ramped up real quick. I didn't realize that the choice was Christianity or the Mandela effect.
You just don't get it because you're one of them, okay?
You're not anymore.
Excuse me?
So him outing her as a non-Christian really ticks her off, and they end up having this argument. And it turns out that her relationship with God isn't the only relationship she's doubting.
I don't care what you believe and don't believe.
But you do, Adam. You know, I'm so tired of having this same conversation over and over again.
Yeah,
Look, I think that the way they got to this argument with the whole Mandela effect thing was a little silly, but lest we forget, this is a God's Not Dead movie. And last time we saw a couple arguing on campus like this, looked like this.
Look, baby, it's just either me or Jesus, okay? If you love me, you'll stop arguing with Professor Radisson.
Okay.
Thanks, baby, I love you.
Now, I'm not saying that the movie gets a pass because of that, but I I do want to recognize this is a much more believably written and performed situation than in the past in this franchise, okay? Good. So, they break up. Dang it.
Are you serious?
I love you.
I know.
Then she goes to a worship service in the middle of the day, and guess who's back? Our old friend, none other than the one and only Josh Whedon. Has he been working out? I mean, not that I noticed that kind of thing. Maybe this is some sort of Mandela effect, because in my reality, I remember him being some skinny dweeb, but here he's pretty good. Well, this time he's graduated, and he's come back to school so he can counsel cute young college girls who are having boyfriend problems. What a nice guy.
If you need to talk about anything or whatever, I'm always here.
Thanks, but I'm fine, really. See ya.
Wow, glad she showed up there for just a few minutes just to leave. Otherwise, we wouldn't have gotten that awesome Josh Whedon reveal. Please stand up. Please stand up. Meanwhile, Keaton's boyfriend is angry because, he kind of broke up with his girlfriend, I guess, even though it seems like they're more on a break. But could it be that he's upset at something deeper? Maybe a heart issue that's going on.
All right, look, you need to sleep it off, man.
So, finding himself angry at his girlfriend and religion and just everything that's going on in his life, he picks up a can of spray paint left there by the protesters, I imagine. And that's probably because they had their signs ready, but they needed to leave blank spaces there so that they could add whoever the judicial nominee was. That joke won't make sense by the time this comes out. Anyway, he spray paints on the church. Liberals get the bullet too. What? And you know what's about to happen. That's right. Oh, snap. It's been 12 hours already? No, not him. Not this guy that has basically been a jerk so far. Don't we kind of like him a little bit? Oh man, no, why? Oh my God's not dead. What are you doing? No, the implications of this are massive. What a misdirect. See, you thought this was gonna be a crazy liberal protester who's mad because they didn't get a cake cooked for them, but no, that's not it. It's just a mistake. This really adds a lot of complexity to the situation. While I don't trust the movie to handle this well, I will say that that is a pretty nice setup for the movie. It's interesting that they're making the major catalyst of all the events in the film a misunderstanding rather than just some straw man. This is a genuine person who made a bad choice, someone that we've gotten to know and we care about. I might be giving this film too much credit. Don't worry, if you think that this God's Not Dead movie is going to let you down by actually having a relatable character, well, let's cut over to a disappointing, super secret school boardroom meeting, sinisterly plotting to get rid of the church altogether.
Our enrollment is down. We stand to lose $15 million because of St. James.
The church is a historic landmark. It was here before the university. We kicked the church off campus now after what just happened.
This is what's best for the students.
Wow. Well, there you go. That's the God's Not Dead I know and love to hate. I'm not gonna say that this would never happen. I mean, with all the weird stuff going on in college campuses, I could see a school today with the church on the campus saying, look, our enrollment's down, and I don't think it's because of the fact that we're basically a waste of time and money. People aren't getting jobs when they graduate from here, but they're stuck in debt. Maybe it's because of this other stupid thing. In fact, I'm surprised this doesn't happen more. But as I've said before, there really isn't a reason to expect some sort of government institution to support a particular religion. That's kinda not what they're there for. If you want to hear my thoughts on that sort of thing, I talk a lot about it in my Christmas with a capital C review, so I won't get into it here, but suffice it to say, this isn't a surprise that this would happen, other than the fact that it hasn't happened. I mean, at least like all of these scenarios, not in this perfect storm Christian persecution complex sort of way. Well, meanwhile, Pastor Dave is really struggling with his loss, and reasonably so. I mean, you can't understand the bond that you form with somebody when you've waited for a tow truck with them. And that's when we go to the funeral of Jude, where we learn the answer to the secret code. That's right.
Always God is good. And God is good. Always.
Whoa, it's that? Who knew? So Dave goes running and, boy, he's struggling. You know, they really got me feeling for David White. What is this movie doing? Come on! All right, stop being a movie. We know this is God's Not Dead. Let's get back to what this franchise is all about. Proving God exists by showing how anti-Christian the United States government is.
You're gonna use this as an opportunity to advance some political agenda?
There it is. So Dave's friend Tom, who works for the school, meets with him for lunch and gives him the bad news that the school is going to try to use its power as a state institution to invoke eminent domain and take the property of the church to build a new student center.
I'm sorry.
So now, the fight begins. That's right, in movie 1, we had a kid who didn't want to do his homework. In movie 2, we had a woman who didn't want to do her job. But this summer, we get a pastor who wants to keep his church. Fight!
Wait, don't we own this land?
Yes.
So how is this legal?
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain. Ever heard of it?
I studied property law a bit in grad school. As I understand it, the state gave all public universities complete autonomy over eminent domain.
I know all about this stuff. I studied under Professor Radisson.
Which means Hadley can legally force us to sell.
Oh, great. Now I have to do all kinds of studying on whether or not this is true. Is this true? Go to break. All right, we're back, and over the break, I did do a little bit of research to try to figure out if this is even a plausible scenario. You know, this whole public school can invoke eminent domain to take down a church, like if that has ever happened, and I found several cases where all the pieces are there, I guess, so if there was some sort of perfect storm, this type of thing could technically happen. We've got cases where the state has tried to buy out a small church in order to build like a stadium or something, and then there's other situations where a state university has tried to invoke eminent domain in order to obtain the property where there's an abandoned mall or something like that. However, in all of these cases, it's always been frowned upon. It's pretty highly controversial, so it would seem if this type of scenario actually did happen, the university would end up looking really bad because people aren't too fond of eminent domain cases in the first place. But with all of these cases that I found, they're a little more complicated and there's a lot more to it. Just like with any of the cases these movies tend to present, there's way more going on and there's a lot more intricate detail than what's being presented in the film. So there you have it. Fortunately, the movie isn't completely focused on that, so I think that's all the research I'm gonna do. Let's get back to the review. All right, so back to Reverend Dave, who's trying to figure out what it is he needs to do about this whole situation. But Josh Whedon, he's got all the answers.
This is why I took on Professor Radisson, why I left law school for this ministry.
Don't you remember that awesome movie about it?
If I could do something, I would. It's not that easy.
Pretty sure God will handle the details.
Yeah, so it turns out Reverend Dave's brother is a lawyer, and that brother is played by none other than John Corbett, who you might remember as the cool husband in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. You know, I would criticize this for retconning him having a brother, like, oh, you shoehorned in this, we didn't know this about him, but I mean, Reverend Dave was just a side character in these movies. There was no reason for us to know anything about him. It makes sense that we didn't know that, but it doesn't make sense that they're focusing the movie on this guy.
Hey, look, this is a property law case. It's not really my thing.
Pierce, you're a social justice attorney.
Oh, a social justice warrior attorney.
Forcing us out because we're a church, this is exactly your thing.
These things always get messy.
God called me to fight.
God calls you, you call me.
See, now, since this movie has shown itself to be semi-competent under the strong direction of industry legend Michael Mason, I'm gonna give the movie a little leeway because I believe that the whole God's calling me to fight stuff is descriptive, not prescriptive. See, Dave is taking the approach that he's been attacked, which is interesting since they weren't attacked, at least not in the way that he thinks that they were. I think this movie knows that this is happening. The movie isn't saying he's doing the right thing. The movie's actually saying that he's being overly aggressive and that this is a problem and that he's hopefully gonna learn the problem of his ways by the end, I think. All right, cut over to Keaton and her friends hanging out with a bunch of old people on the bleachers? What is happening here? Doesn't matter. It turns out Adam is feeling kind of bad for his involuntary manslaughter, you know. Meanwhile, Pastor Dave and his brother Pierce are catching up. And it's weird because these two actually have some genuine chemistry.
I'm starving. There's nothing in that fridge but moldy casseroles. Is dough still open?
Yes.
Well, let's go. Don't eat that.
They feel like they're actually brothers. Don't get me wrong, John Corbett is a way better actor than David White, and these scenes really highlight that.
The government takes private property. They do it all the time. End of story. How do you think highways and railroads get built, man?
Is he saying who would build the roads?
Said they need the land to build a new student union. I hardly think that qualifies.
We'll see, it might.
I mean, This is true. Like I said, I don't know if this has ever happened with a college trying to get rid of a church, but the government has invoked eminent domain for ridiculous reasons. There's this movie called Little Pink House that came out this last year that was about the government kicking a woman out of her house or forcing her to sell her house so that this company could come in and develop condos or something like that. It's wrong, and I'm glad that that movie and this movie are addressing it.
They just want the church gone because they think it's bad PR for the university.
Yeah, they're probably right.
Pierce.
Hey, listen, man. I said this ain't my thing. Why don't I just go home? You can do it.
No, please, I can't carry this movie on my own. But deep down, Pierce really does want to help out his little brother, so he lets him know, hey man, here's the dealio. This is what we're gonna do.
I'm gonna write a letter to the Board of Trustees and introduce myself as your legal counsel. One step at a time, little brother.
Aw, well that's sweet, but a little too real. Can we get some cartoony characters real quick?
My advice is take care of this now, or the person who replaces you will.
Yep, there it is. Meanwhile, Keaton tells Adam to just forget about it. Come on.
Maybe you just need to stop thinking about it.
But he wants forgiveness from God or something? What's that?
His friends, his parents, they deserve to know the truth. It was an accident.
Please just say you confess. Maybe they'll go easy on you, but maybe they won't.
Ah, man. Girlfriends in this franchise are the worst, aren't they? They're like, don't listen to your conscience. What?
Do you really believe that there's a God?
I don't know.
Hey, Pierce, I'm head of the church. You want to join?
Not one bit.
Then we cut back over to Reverend Dave and Pierce talking about life, which you would think, especially in this film franchise, it would be boring, but I don't hate it. I'm skipping it now because I don't need it for my review, but you can take my word for it. It's a nice conversation. It's nice that the movie takes the time to slow down a little bit and get to know the characters. It's good. I liked it. And then the next day, this could have gone bad really quickly, and it really highlights the directing prowess of first-time director Michael Mason. We get to the church, and Dave has to stall this wrecking crew from tearing down his church.
Hey, buddy, I have a demo permit.
You got a permit to wreck a church on a Sunday? Really?
Yeah, what can I say?
You touch this church before I get back, I'll have you arrested for destruction of property. Okay? You stay put.
Yeah, but what do you want me to do?
I don't know. Stall.
So Dave starts preaching.
So the Bible is the Word of God. But how often do we really take time to read it? Start at the top, shall we? In the beginning.
This is a funny scene. Meanwhile, Pierce has to go and find the judge to try to get some sort of hold on the wrecking crew.
Are you kidding me?
He can't find her because she's in church.
Of course she is. It's Sunday.
So this guy who hates church has to go into this church with her picture on his phone to try to look for her.
Your Honor, I am so sorry.
I'm in the middle of Mass.
It involves a church.
So Pierce gets the judge to sign the document that stops the demolition from happening.
Cease and desist.
And so they buy themselves a little more time to get their things in order. And that whole scenario, it could have been really bad. It could have been super cheesy, and they made it work. I have to acknowledge that. That's impressive. But of course, in this movie, you know what happens anytime I compliment a scene. They follow up that scene with a terrible, awful scene. And in this case, it is a bunch of random political commentators talking about this major national event. I hate when movies do this. It takes me out of the film so much. Batman v Superman did this a bunch too. It gives you a sense of what the national zeitgeist is. What is everybody thinking about this? But it's super impersonal. It's super cringy. To me, it's just a little lower than voiceover. It's a cop-out. So we cut back to the movie, currently in progress, and Dave and Pierce, are having this argument about the movie's happenings, you know? And Pierce says, well, all of the things that I've said in my reviews for the previous two movies.
I'm not engaging in a false narrative with you. It undermines true religious liberty.
You're talking to a guy who went to jail. How is that false narrative?
Because it's never that simple. The Christian church has a long history of persecuting people, and then those people push back, and you guys want to cry victim.
And what's happening? That is good. Are Christian movies, are they becoming self-aware? What could this mean? All right, then we have Pierce's first meeting with the school board, which is pretty fun.
I get it. It's a prime piece of land. If it were me, I'd put in a big student center. I mean, to me, that's more valuable than a dusty old church. No offense, but he knows how I feel about it. Here's the problem. What you're doing, it's against the law.
So they decide to, of course, sue the school.
Withdraw your claim, or we sue.
Which we've learned by now, of course, that that's the best way to prove that God exists. Then they decide that they've got to change the narrative in the media.
We got to change the conversation in the media.
So they go to the most prominent news source, of course, Dana Lausch Live. That's right, this prominent NRA spokesperson is really gonna get the message out there to the people who need to know. She's changing so many minds because the people who watch her show definitely aren't just people who totally agree with her. See, this liberal biracial couple is watching her so intently. Then the two brothers bond over cutting down a tree, which again, you would think that would be super boring. But honestly, I never expected that a God's Not Dead movie would actually slow down and have some honest dialogue. Yet, here it is.
Do you even believe in what we're fighting for?
Do I believe in your right to keep your church? Yes, but the rest of it, you know the answer.
In previous films, we see anybody who isn't a Christian as kind of an evil atheist or non-Christian. They're very poorly represented. Here we get a guy who doesn't believe, well representing the argument as to why he believes in freedom, even though he doesn't believe in Dave's religion. You might say it's even fair and balanced.
So religion has no value except for the laws that protect it.
Value? I don't know.
Wow.
Okay, I don't expect you to agree, but that's okay, because this is healthy. It's a healthy discourse.
Pierce, people are broken.
Church is the answer to those problems, huh? Why do you need me to agree with you about everything? I'm just your lawyer. But man, you're my little brother, and I don't like to see people push you around. And right now, that answer's got to be good enough for you.
Wow, so that was a solid scene. But you know what? Since we did have a solid scene, you know what's gonna happen next. That's right, a scene to ruin it. Which happens to be this dumb Newsboys cameo that is literally phoned in.
The cross is both vertical and horizontal. Vertical is me and God, the horizontal part, you and I. Sometimes we get so caught up in the vertical, we forget the horizontal.
Michael Tate, you know you're on camera right now, right? What are these guys even talking about? I'm pretty sure that the cross is vertical and horizontal, so Roman soldiers could nail bodies to them. So that stupid bumper sticker analogy, well, that really shakes Keaton up and makes her realize, oh, there must be a God. Then we get this guy's How I Became a Non-Believer story, which I'm making fun of, but actually is a believable story.
Do you know why my mom divorced my dad? He used to beat her. You know what our church did? They called her a sinner. They humiliated her. So yeah, I get angry sometimes. I didn't mean for anybody to get hurt.
I know you didn't. For what it's worth, I prayed about it.
And?
No answer.
I honestly can't believe how focused this movie is on its single storyline. Obviously, there's two stories going on here, but they're very tightly connected, especially now that I've cut out all of Pastor Dave's love story. It's a really comprehensive film. Then there's this quick scene that I'm skipping over also where Dave gets punched in the face by his friend Tom. I'm only mentioning it so I don't get a bunch of comments asking, why does Dave have a big old black eye for the rest of the movie? All right, so the case is getting so heated, they're having to bring in an expert, none other than Josh Whedon, to help them figure it out, kind of like they did with Justice League. So John Corbett asks Josh Whedon how he can still be a Christian and also stand up against oppression.
Do you think that your religious beliefs get in the way of real social change?
Because Josh Whedon isn't a libertarian, he can't give a simple answer like, well, I believe in the non-aggression principle, similar to Jesus's golden rule, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So I believe in standing up for the oppressed, but not at the expense of oppressing others in order to do so. I think we can stand up for justice without expecting the government to do it for us, as the government is, of course, the most oppressive force in human history. Because Josh isn't nearly as woke as me, he instead gives this beautiful gift of a line. The most awesome line that I have ever heard in any of these movies. Guaranteed to bring all of the kids on board. Here we go.
I mean, Jesus was the ultimate social justice warrior.
The ultimate social justice warrior. Jesus Christ is the ultimate social justice warrior.
Consistently stood up for the mistreated and the marginalized.
Okay. Now, as stupid as that line is, and it is, I actually like some of what he says here.
I wish I'd seen those words put into action more often.
Yeah, me too. We're all responsible for our part, but it's grace and then justice. Without grace as our goal, we're just fighting.
Hearing a God's Not Dead movie talk about loving one another and grace and stuff is, well, it's quite a stray from what the previous films were preaching. All right, now they sit before the judge.
May I say something?
Well, you brought the lawsuit.
I am glad that they're finally recognizing that it is the Christians who are bringing the lawsuit. That's something that the other two movies failed to recognize.
If you want to assess the value of the church to this community, just turn on the news. The community is speaking loudly.
Yes, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, the foundation of the American judicial system. But apparently that argument worked because now...
We're going to court.
Yay.
Come on, man. It's a big win.
But Reverend Dave isn't too happy about this. He's struggling a little bit. He doesn't want this.
I'm not happy suing my friend. I'm not happy suing anybody.
My company, Pureflix, just happens to get involved in a heck of a lot of lawsuits. But then things get out of control whenever Dave receives this anonymous text message about who actually killed Jude. And this really ticks him off. And he goes to the school to confront Adam.
Hey, Adam, is it true?
Tell me!
Hold on.
What is wrong with you?
Jeez, Dave is really spiraling out of control. I think jail really hardened Dave. Oh, and it ends up on social media. What are you doing, Dave? This looks really bad, man. However, that doesn't mean Adam is without consequences, as he ends up in jail. And things continue to escalate and spiral out of control when our liberal vlogger friend calls out to his fans for a protest.
Make sure your voice is heard. Be there. Be mad. Because this fight is far from over.
Well, I would sum up what's happened so far, but fortunately, Fake the 5 here goes ahead and does it for me, so I'll just let her say it.
Both sides are totally fired up. Huge protest is planned for the weekend, and this is teed up for disaster. It's a sign of the times, isn't it? Everybody's yelling, nobody's listening.
Then we cut over to this little homage to the original film where Josh Whedon is in a library with this movie's hero, Keaton.
A friend sent this to me when I was in high school. At the time, I'd never even considered that God could be dead.
So the original movie, God's Not Dead, is what made her question her faith? Yeah, I could see that. But then Josh Whedon gives some advice that is like freaking amazing and is a huge part of kind of the mission of my channel.
It's good to ask difficult questions. God can use it. He's not afraid of your uncertainty.
Wow, a Christian movie that isn't a pile of insecurity? Interesting.
You know, I think about John the Baptist and Herod's little jail cell.
Wait, how does he know the size of Herod's jail cell?
What if I'm wrong about this Jesus guy? So John sent some of his friends to watch Jesus and report back. John needed to doubt.
Why, though?
Uncertainty led to the pursuit of truth.
Well, I agree with this as well. Meanwhile, Dave and his brother have a fight.
I don't know what God wants me to do, and I don't know why any of this is even happening.
First, you gotta settle down.
I'm sure this is fun for you.
Which leads to Dave just not... He doesn't know what he's doing. He thinks he's doing the right thing, but maybe he's not. So he goes to his pastor friend for advice.
I didn't ask for this fight.
That's a fact, but here it is.
I think what's important is that Christians stop rolling over all the time. When is it our right to fight? Tired of being pushed around.
This is a theory. But in this scene, I feel like David White is playing the part of the God's Not Dead film franchise, and this old wise black man is playing the part of the Christian critics of the franchise.
I think it's time that Christians stand up for themselves.
People were drawn to Jesus because of his love. He was gentle with the meek and hard as a rock with the arrogant. And when he talked to the foolish, he was patient. Never became a fool himself.
And no offense, but maybe you'd understand a little better if you were the one being attacked.
Brother, who do you think you're talking to? I'm a black preacher in the deep south. I could build you a church with all the bricks been thrown through my windows.
Wow.
We cannot respond to hate with more hate. We are called to be a light in the darkness.
Look, this guy's awesome, and he's so right. This message is so good. He basically tells David White, dude, you're wrong. If you think God's calling you to not turn the other cheek just because you perceive that your situation's worse than anybody else in history, you're wrong. Then later, Pierce and Dave have this really passionate argument about why Pierce and his brother don't get along anymore.
Forgave you years ago.
You forgave me. For what exactly? For leaving? You forced me out, you and Mom and Dad, all of you. I wasn't welcome in this house once I started asking tough questions.
Is that what they were? Tough questions? Why did God allow bad things to happen to good people? Or how do we even know God exists?
Well, at least I know what's happening in the world 5 miles outside the county line.
You're right, I don't know.
I gotta say, it's really cathartic to hear somebody say this stuff to David A.R. White.
And I don't know why you left me to take care of Mom and Dad when they were sick. You broke their heart.
You're the one that broke my heart. You didn't take the time to understand what I was going through. I was trying to sort out my own faith. I was changing, and you all hated me for it. And that's the truth, David.
Whoa, maybe this is how Christians feel when they hear their beliefs in a movie. Because I'm feeling that. I'm like, oh yeah, this movie isn't fantastic, but yes, I agree with those things that's being said. I love it. This movie's great. So then we get this montage, which is also done right. It's interesting because throughout this montage, it's just like nobody is a Christian. The pastor starts to realize that maybe he's fighting the wrong fight. Our college friend Keaton isn't sure what she believes. The movie does a fantastic job here at artfully depicting the inner struggle and the rage that's happening inside of these people throughout this montage. It's sad, it's moving, it's very relatable to see somebody struggling with something when they thought they knew everything and they realize that they don't, they're not sure. I connected with this a lot. Part of maturing and growing up is actually coming to a place where you're realizing you don't have everything figured out. What are they trying to do here? Ruin my channel? Come on!
What am I doing wrong? Just show me.
How do I get Segadite Kevin to say something positive about my movies? So in an emotional scene that I actually might have cried a little bit in, Dave goes to talk to Adam in jail.
I'm the one that sent you that message. I needed you to know. I guess I was hoping that you'd forgive.
God! You got me. That's,
Sorry.
Realizing this whole thing had spun out of control, Dave goes and talks to Ted McGinley.
Town's on edge. The whole thing's gone too far.
Didn't have to.
You're right. And I'm sorry.
Me too.
Then we go over to the church where people are protesting, and Reverend Dave gets up to speak to the crowd.
I came here tonight to ask all of you for your forgiveness.
What?
This building is not my church. Although St. James has meant everything to me, I would gladly give all that up for you. So I am withdrawing my lawsuit against the school. I'm going to build a new church. Let's stop shouting at each other and start listening. It's the only way that things will get better.
I feel like this movie with this scene is kind of apologizing for the previous two films. I could be wrong, and I'm sure Pureflix wouldn't say, like, yeah, sorry about those movies, because they still want to sell those movies, but wow. Then they kind of ruin it with these candles or whatever.
Take these candles.
I don't know. It could have been way cheesier. Then we end off with this voiceover.
Sometimes all it takes is a spark.
Which is actually the same voiceover we heard at the beginning of the film, which I don't think is awful. It's a little bit like Gone Girl, where at the beginning of the film we had some voiceover, and now we're hearing the same voiceover, but in the context of having just watched the film. Great creative choice, the one and only Michael Mason. Then we get this guy on his vlog.
We were there. I mean, this dude's legit.
Do you relate yet? Please relate with us.
He could have given Hadley the finger.
No, not the finger.
Perhaps the rest of the country can take a page from this book.
Trump. And then we finish it off with the obligatory Facebook post. Wow, they proved it a third time. People said they couldn't do it, but they did it. Proven!
My God's not dead, he's surely
Then we end off with this jungle remix of the God's Not Dead song. Well, there you have it. God's Not Dead, A Light in Darkness. What the heck just happened? Did I just watch a good God's Not Dead movie? Well, let's talk it out. It's definitely the most surprising movie of the three. I gotta say, I didn't hate the movie at all, which I do hate the other two movies. I like the message of love and grace, laying down your arms and not trying to fight some sort of lawsuit culture war. I agree with a lot of what the movie had to say, especially about forgiveness. I like the central story arc. You have a man who is basically a Christian culture warrior who, over the course of the film, learns that maybe it's better to be a more loving man. I also appreciate a Christian movie that isn't afraid to show a Christian who isn't there yet. It's cool to see a story about somebody who thinks that they're listening to the Holy Spirit and doing what God's called them to do before realizing, wait a minute, this can't be what I'm being called to do because this isn't what Christianity is all about. It's amazing how the movie is able to depict God being so distant throughout the entire movie. You really feel like God is talked about, but he's never there. But when he finally is there, that's when people start to love. I mean, the movie starts off super hokey, and then it gets incrementally better. Specifically, whenever John Corbett enters the scene, you're like, maybe this movie isn't so bad. There are a few things that are a little too hey kids, we're cool, right? And I really don't like the idea of free speech being restricted to truth or even Jesus. And maybe they just weren't thinking when they said that stuff. I 100% disagree with that. I also think that some of the news report stuff was super dumb, but some other stuff that I really liked is that it had some good non-Christians. It didn't tell you to text your friends at the end, and it didn't have some sort of list of misleading court cases at the end trying to justify the creation of the film. I really liked any of the new actors. I didn't like any of the old actors. They just weren't up to par. I think that this movie is a better movie, and those original actors just felt very out of place. The only one that really was okay was David White's poor acting, which it stood out, but I feel like he was kind of playing himself, and he plays that naive Christian really well. Why would you question Christianity? I don't get it. John Corbett knocked it out of the park. So, was it a good movie? Well, it was pretty boring at parts. There were whole scenes that I cut out of the review that I didn't comment on because it was just saying the same thing that had already been said earlier on in a better, more subtle way. But yet it's almost like they felt like they had to put in another scene that says it right to the audience. Like they're not confident enough in its audience or in itself to recognize, oh, that point has already been said. We did a good job. We don't need to say it again. This movie is a weird sort of thing where it uses the expectations you have for a God's Not Dead franchise and subverts them. It only makes sense because it exists, but it's completely giving a different message than the other films. Unless, of course, this was the plan all along and they were gonna make this the final message of the trilogy. No, that's not what happened. I often say that a good message doesn't make a good movie. And I have to recognize that even when I agree with the message, which I agreed with a lot of things that were in this movie. So while I agree with it, I didn't really find the movie enjoyable or interesting or even necessary as a movie. But as a God's Not Dead movie, well, there's really no reason why a God's Not Dead movie would be this good. That it would have this good of acting, this well shot, or even have so many relatable characters and moments. And yet, this movie does. So if we're looking at this just as a God's Not Dead movie, yeah, it was great, but probably a day late and $1 short for this. Anybody who likes the film franchise would probably be a little offended by this, and anybody who doesn't like the film franchise, why would they go see the movie? I feel like the people who made this movie would be better served working on a whole different project instead of trying to tie it into this crap franchise. So hopefully, since the movie didn't do super well, the studio will take that into account and say, all right, we made a good movie, but the God's Not Dead thing is dead. God's Not Dead is officially dead. So let's take the amazing, talented Michael Mason and make him the director of just a movie he wants to make. I don't know, maybe that movie will come out soon. And when it does, I look forward to checking it out. What did you guys think of it? If you saw it, was it better than you expected or was it worse? Am I off base on some of this stuff? Let me know. I mean, I'm second guessing myself a little bit here. Be sure to check out that short film by Pascal Schmidlin. Also, if you want to give to my Patreon, please do so. It's patreon.com/saygoodnightkev. It takes a lot of work to put these reviews together, but I have a lot of fun with it. The main reason I'm able to spend so much time doing it is because of the people who pledge over at Patreon. For example, the Defenders of Liberty podcast, which I happened to be on this past week, so go check that out. It's linked in the description. The Barely Protestant podcast, Andrea and Phil Lawson, Jacob and Emily Rugrock, and Amanda Stewart. Those people are amazing. I'm so grateful. We have some awesome rewards over there, so you can check that out, including, don't forget, this month, if you pledge $10 or more, you will get the amazing brand new Say Goodnight Kevin shirt. Tell me another YouTube channel gives away $10 shirts that are of that quality. Try that shirt on, and you're gonna be blown away. This isn't a cheap shirt. It's got 2 colors, okay? Great, good. That's all I got. Talk to you later. Good night.
Sometimes we get so caught up in the vertical, we forget the horizontal.